My name is Ashraf Jamal. I'm a writer, thinker, philosopher. I work in the arts more generally, and I'm also a teacher. Well, the first thing about the conversation, it's about people, and the space was incredibly congested, and it was load shedding. So it was tropical rather than wintry, given the body heat. And there's just twinkly lights around the whole space, which made it rather magical. What struck me was the reverence that people had for the space, and which could be a good thing, could also be a bad thing, but I realized there's so many avid minds keen for a conversation. So that's the one thing that was missing in the end, was the conversation with the public. But he kicked off with a very exciting monologue, which basically, ironically, spoke about writing the book in the depths of the night while in Pennsylvania. And as you know, Achille and Mbembe's thought is massively invested in French and German thinking. And it's written in French. He seems to have no understanding or interest in the English translation. But for us, as English speakers, what's exciting is that this book, this very difficult, demanding book, has somehow taken hold, certainly on the intellectual imagination in sub-Saharan Africa. What is very striking in the way he spoke about it was he was trying to position why a book like that, which was written 10 years ago, could still be relevant today. And it was clear that its relevance lay in the fact that after 24 years plus of democracy, we have fundamentally failed the people, not just the needs of the poor. Our educational systems, he says, need to be decommissioned because they somehow are still caught up in some kind of a craven cultural chauvinism, and he felt that universities need to somehow be answerable to that. One of the reasons I like to teach young people is because I'm a devotee to education. I don't treat it as a profession, it's my life force. I'm also the father of young girls, and I'm devoted to their education. And for me, obviously, youth is central, and this is something, in fact, that Achille was mentioning as well when he was speaking about the Roads Must Fall movement, and he said that, we have to address this new generation that has emerged in the last 24 years, who have not necessarily inherited a pathological history of pain or resistance, but ironically find themselves immersed in comparatively similar problems. What's been revealed is that education in this country has been top down, it's been punitive, it's been in many ways tyrannical, so that people have used education as a means to oppress and indenture people within a received system of thinking. Young people now realize that that's insufficient, it doesn't work, something else has to happen, they have to question the existing status quo. So Roads Must Fall is a phenomenon which is not built simply on the fact that one has to tear down figures of empire. It's really about trying to tackle the question of how we actually repurpose education, how we make it much more viable and necessary and relevant to an enormously diverse range of people who actually are part of our society, who are aspirant students who need to learn, who need to be grown and engendered inside of a tertiary system. Phenomena like Roads Must Fall are reminding us that even in the humanities, they are also going through a change. And in that change, we can actually create a better intellectual culture broadly. Because of course, we don't simply want to turn people into drones within a workforce. We want to make them people who have professions, who have an ethics, have a strong citizenry and a commitment within the job forum, within the social forum, within the political forum. So we need to change the way we actually construct or nurture our students. My problem has always been that within the arts, let's even take the visual arts, not just the humanities generally, it's been far too rarefied. I feel that in many ways the art schools have buffered themselves against or withdrawn from the bigger concerns. of society. And that's been a problem, because I've always said, for example, in my context when I taught at Rhodes, that we really need to teach students about the reality of business, about surviving, earning a living. It's one thing to learn a skill. It's another thing to be able to translate that skill in the living world, and to be able to negotiate with dealerships, galleries, international fairs, etc., to give them the confidence that they can actually work professionally. And it's the professionalism of being an art maker that I feel that institutions tend to neglect. For example, at CPUT where I teach, one of the slogans is, happiness is a degree with working experience. Well, at most institutions, they don't even begin to think that working experience is relevant. It's all about the degree. It's how you connect the two that's important if we're going to actually create a more thriving tertiary system. The digital reality. The fact, for example, that most people in Africa can't afford to go to an art shop and buy oils, etc. It's not surprising, therefore, there's a major investiture in digital technology in Africa. What it's used for, obviously, is up for grabs, but one thing that seems to be evident is that within Africa, it's being used to sustain an oral tradition. It's used as a means to communicate across spaces and across boundaries. It's used to share music, to create music, and it's a space in which to actually, through Instagram, for example, to post one's own sort of dreams and imaginings and self-constructions. And interestingly, there are points in which, for example, traditional forms, for example, the white cube, the dealership, can connect with sort of the technological forms and open up spaces and possibilities. If, for example, there are people around who are alert enough to the talents of people to do that sort of thing. That's one thing that's happening. But definitely, it's interesting. I mean, I would never say that, for example, the white cube's over, that the gallery space becomes redundant. It's not the case. On the contrary, the very resilience of modernism has proven to us that, and the very resilience of contemporary art globally, and has proven to us that basically we'll never get around the fact that people love the temple or the mecca of modernist or contemporary art. So these spaces will never go away, and we need them. But at the same time, I think we have this growing underground of youth, for example, who might not have access to more privileged art schools, who go into community arts projects and use them as vehicles to generate and create their own work. And a lot of dealerships internationally, locally, are connecting with artists there and bringing them out of the shadows into the public sphere. So there are many, many community arenas that we need to sustain and generate and push and look out for, as well as cherish our existing sort of tertiary art schools, and not see one as privileged and the other as lesser, but see them as coterminous, working together to create a new ethos, a new culture of art reception and production. I'm really intrigued by how Africa as a continent, as an idea and as an imaginary, has become a key trope for what I call a new global ethical humanism. What I mean by this is that after 500 years of colonization, primarily Western control over Africa, there's a realization that we have to change the power dynamics that have actually existed in the past. And the interest in African art, I think, it's not just about the fact that it's a new market. Africa as a platform is opening up that space for a new way of actually sort of producing a new economy, not only of art making, but of art reception, that's going to have international impact. And what's fascinating about Africa, and I'm speaking very crudely and boldly about a continent which is incomprehensible to understand in any singular way, is that there are so many other modes of existence and expression that we possess and can generate on our land, in our continent. And this is what's becoming increasingly intriguing. Because Africa has been a continent, caught in extremis more than any other, it's had to develop incredible ingenuity. And I think this is what's actually startled the rest of the world is our incredible capacity for innovation and imagination, for surprise and delight. While being caught in the very maw of darkness and gravity, we're able, through the darkness, to galvanize something that is special. So we create strange mirrors, reflectors to conditions elsewhere in the world. We don't seem to have the same problems of exhaustion, turgidity, or over-definition, which arts from elsewhere seem to be sort of crippled by. At one level, one could say, is this just an opportunistic exercise? Yeah, another level you could say, no, it isn't. It's actually just a pragmatic reality. You know, we cannot allow ourselves to be trapped in some ghetto or some parochial state of nationhood. You know, that we have so many infrastructural strengths here that will allow us to actually connect effectively, broadly with sub-Saharan Africa and the world at large, and we need to feel that we can do that. And the irony is, not the irony there, the serendipity is that at the same time as you guys are moving outward to try and find a broader platform through which to express art, the rest of the world is coming here simultaneously, so it's a beautiful reciprocity that's happening. And that's, for me, the thrilling thing about what you are doing, you know, as an organization, as a journal, arts journal, as a magazine, as just an emotion, sharing art and generating it worldwide. And obviously I wish for nothing more than for your sort of project to grow and grow, especially given the fact that it's boom time at the moment for so many arts initiatives that are coming out of this continent. Everything we do is going to be an experiment, and everything we do will come with its strengths and its failures. But that's the wonder of being alive. You know, finally, you know, just as much as tertiary institutions need to humanize, magazines need to become more real and more experimental. Artists and dealers and all the other people in between need to find a healthier system of negotiation, you know, to actually open up spaces for creativity. And that's really what all we're here to do in our various ways. Try our best to mirror and tell thrilling stories of the lives we live and the times we live in.